Yo, okay, hey, he got it fixed in time. Whoa.
Lord have mercy.
You're kind of close.
Yeah, it's hella close.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing better. I'm doing better. And like shout out to everybody that definitely sent my wife well wishes. She's doing much better. She's feeling
Yay.
better. It's still work in progress, but she's doing all right. So, but she's getting back to Erica. And anybody that met
Yay.
Erica, you know.
Yay. That's good to
Look,
hear.
she's a brave little toaster.
Little toaster. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So, how are you? What's been going on with you?
What has been going with me? Well, I'm back from AfroTech,
Okay.
which did we talk about last time? I can't remember if okay, we were off. That's why.
But
Right.
feel free. We can always talk about it.
So for me personally, it was more Afro than tech.
Okay.
Um,
I
but
heard
that's
that.
okay. That's okay. I think if you are just starting out in your tech career, I think it's a great place to start as far as job opportunities and meeting people.
Hmm.
Um, I will say that one thing that they are going to be doing for next year, it's in Houston again next year, October 27th through the 31st, I believe. One thing they're going to do for next year is to increase the offerings on the executive track. And I had the executive ticket. So I thought that was good. But I also didn't have very high expectations or just expectations, period, I should say, for my first Afrotech. I had fun, ran into hella cousins. So shout out if you were there and I met you. That was really nice. And then, Houston,
Hmm.
a whole vibe. And I was definitely in them Houston streets kicking it way too hard. And I'm looking forward to it next year. But I did meet a lot of cool people that I hope to follow up with and
Okay.
have them as guests on the show.
Nice, 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 nice. Yeah, 2025 is going to be a pretty jam-packed year for us, especially since we'll be having a lot of very cool guests coming onto the
Mhm.
show. So I'm really, really excited about that. So, all right. So should we get it popping? You
Yeah,
know,
we have a lot to cover in this hour, and we have a hard stop at 6.
it's getting sticky.
Well, it is.
I got that mop. All right.
Get
So,
it.
what's good, everybody? I am Mark Monroe, accompanied by my wonderful co-host, co-producer, co-creator, and all things galactic. Give it up for none other than the wonderful GCEO. It's
Oh my gosh, what do I say? I'm just kidding. It's Jill and GC and the place to be. What does it, cousins? And yeah, that's all I got for right now.
okay. Well, you're fresh from AfroTech, so we'll give you that one. So, if you
There it goes.
okay, there it is. I was gonna. I forgot about the song that we were doing, but when
Right.
we were off air, I think it was the Rihanna song, but
I know. Now you're gonna have that stuck in my head. It was gone, but now it's gonna be back.
oh, I
Y'all,
don't.
wait, I do have to say, Mark hella hit this high note. I was like, okay,
What was
mess
the
up.
song again?
I'm not saying.
Okay,
I'm not
there it
saying.
is.
I'm not saying because it's gonna get stuck in my head.
Okay, so Jolene, we got, like you said, we have a lot to get into with
Yes.
a short amount of time. Y'all, I hope you have your pen and paper ready, because you guys know how we do. Yeah, here I am waving a pencil, and my iPad is
My iPad is dead.
dead.
It's dead.
But
So
we got a lot to get into. So I have it over here on my prompt side of the screen.
mhm.
So
I have
we're
multiple windows, Mark.
oh, I'm ultra wide over here. So
Yeah.
let me know, where is it that we should start? How is it that we should get this popping? Should we get
Okay.
it popping with an "I told you so," or should we get it popping with?
Definitely. You definitely need your space to talk your ish. But how about we just let them know like what we're gonna cover in today's episode?
Let's do
So
it. Let's do it.
right. So today's topics that we're going to cover. Well, first of all, the title of the show is go ahead, Mark.
Oh, Trey Talk,
No,
or
will you be broke or rich in
will you
2028?
be broke or rich in 2028? That is a good question to ask.
Answer that question now in the chat. And tell the
We'll
truth.
answer it in the chat. Will you be broke or rich in the
Yeah.
chat? So if you, and it's okay. It's like, look, we all start somewhere, or we're all where we're at. So just give an honest answer if you can. If
Okay,
you
I'm
have
gonna
to,
put my answer in.
lie, but we preferably. But yeah, so all right, so goal to be okay. So we got goal to be rich. I'm seeing a lot of rich. I'm hearing ooh, I like this
Okay,
one. Richer. I love that.
we got Rich
And
AF.
then okay, yes, we got all
The
right.
vibes. I like that. I like that.
Jolene over here talking about it's a heist.
I'm going on a
And
money.
then somebody says, after I finish this PhD, I'll be rich. I will
Okay,
be
okay.
look, I will be comfortable at okay, bet. All right.
All right. All
Okay. All right. So and then we got another rich AF. All right. I love it. I love it. Somebody says what is it? I plan to be rich. Right now my portfolio is on the struggle bus, but ready to fix it. Okay. Well, I mean, hey, get the wrench, get the screwdriver, whatever is necessary, and let's get to fixing it. All right. So Jolene, so I'm guessing that we have like majority of the room right now is optimistic. I think we have some
Mhm.
cautiously optimistic minds in the room, and that's
Good.
okay.
Yep.
I haven't seen anything in the chat that says broke.
Well,
So,
I wouldn't
you know,
expect broke from come up cousins, but I mean, rich auntie. Okay. All right now.
we
Oh,
got we
someone
got a
said
walk away in
walking
the room.
away. D'Angelo
I,
said
s-
walking away.
I see you, little
Okay,
bro.
D'Angelo. I see you. I see you.
All right.
Um,
So,
someone said it depends on how you define being rich. It's up to you. So
it's up
you
to you.
set your own definition.
It's up to
All
you.
right. Design your life.
Okay.
But Mark, the topics as we just so that we can, frame this
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to talk about the U.S. debt bomb along with the corporate debt bomb. We're going to talk
Yep.
about some M&A, aka mergers and acquisitions. Also, we're going to get into tariffs,
Okay.
the jobs lookout for 2025,
Okay.
and we're going to talk about two tech giants potentially going at it
Okay.
and how all of that impacts your entire life, basically. Yeah. So
Okay.
let's get into it. Where
I
do
was
you
gonna
want to
say,
start?
look.
Okay, so
I'm easy like Sunday morning. So let's go. Look.
all right, let's talk about the debt. We'll move from broke to rich. So
Let's
let's
do
talk
it.
about the debt
Okay.
first.
All right.
So
So we are we talking about U.S. based debt? Or are we going to talk about
yeah,
corporate debt?
let's go micro and then or macro, then micro. So US,
Okay.
then corporate.
So U.S. debt is at 30. It's above a little bit above $36 trillion. I think you had some pretty dope stats on here. Like for example, 14% of
Mhm.
interest, like the interest payments now represent 14% of the entire budget, which is exceeding military spending. So I want
Right.
everybody to understand that military spending is one of our heaviest expenses. I think it's one of three. Um, I think we spend in other areas like Medicare and all this other stuff. But I mean, still, I mean,
But
if your interest payments exceed, say, for example, one of your top spends, that's something to
But
think
I
about.
think we also need to pause, Mark, on
Yeah,
this $36 trillion. Like, what?
it's the U.S. It's just a number. It's just an arbitrary number. I'm just kidding. It's not an arbitrary number at
That's a
all.
lot of debt.
Nah, it's a lot of debt when you're spending $1 trillion in interest payments and not even really making a dent. Now you start to understand what students feel when they pay their student loans or when people are making those mortgage
Mhm,
payments. Listen, I understand. I understand. So that's something that we definitely need to be attentive to because, of
mhm.
course, it's like when you see U.S. debt and you see how that goes across, like looking at even more granular, like bringing it in micro. So we live in Seattle, Washington, right? And so Seattle, the city of Seattle, I mean, was the city of Seattle has a $261 million deficit out of
Yeah.
an $8 billion budget. So our city's budget is $8 billion, and out of the $8 billion, it's $261 million in the hole. So what does something like that do? So I'm gonna explain it to you on this level, so then that way you can
Mhm.
kind of get an idea of what it looks like on a macro level, which is the overall U.S. So what
Okay.
happens? You have like say for example the city of Seattle that starts to decrease exactly how many jobs that they start to literally they either go some go furloughed or some they just like say okay hey we're just going to cut recruiting in these particular departments, which means that if you're cutting in specific departments, let's say public works, so where it's like people clean parks and everything else, well, those parks are going to take a little bit longer to get cleaned up and everything else. If you're looking at other areas as it pertains to like where the budget goes as it pertains to education, that education spend, or to nonprofits that benefit on, say, for example, any of those fundings, or when you look at, say, for example, municipal projects, like for example, cleaning up streets, roads, and all those other things, where
Mhm.
where a lot of small businesses, they rely on that contract work from municipalities. When those things get cut back, then that hurts the project, and then ultimately, if it hurts the project, then ultimately that's jobs that's also hurting. And when you think about it, it's like all states ultimately have their own GDP, and then you combine that all together, and then that's ultimately how you get to the overall US based GDP. So
Well,
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I do want to share that, like, with the when I think about Seattle's budget and this deficit, how it will impact the nonprofit sector. Like, I just went to the Urban League's annual breakfast,
Yep.
and while sitting there before the event was over, they were able to raise $1.3 million
Mm-hmm.
during this breakfast that started at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
There was over 2,000 people there, right? And when I think about how these organizations are the nonprofit organizations in Seattle do the majority of the service work.
Mm-hmm.
So they usually stand in the gap for when there's like a job issue. Like if there's less jobs, then they try to place you with different jobs or supplement like your things that have to do with a lack of income or reduced income. So think paying light bills, think um, utility bills covered, packages for when newborns are born, even assistance in purchasing a home. So if the city is reducing their budget, then you can imagine that also the state would be, it has impacts for the state as well.
Right.
So now the organizations will be competing for some of those dollars. So if they're competing, that means that there will be less to offer. So that means more people will be suffering because if you think about it, Washington State overall is a blue state. And so if we have the federal government reducing money that's going out to all these organizations, it's going to have major implications for not only just the nonprofit sector,
Mm-hmm.
because again, that kind of captures the gap that tends to happen. But it's going to have impact on just everyone that lives in Washington State. And then you look at that as a small example, and then you kind of step back, and then it impacts even more people. You know, you look at the city of Seattle, we're one of the smartest, most educated, and the most millionaires per capita.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's great, but at the same time, those aren't the only people that live here. So we really have to take into consideration how is this going to impact everybody on this spectrum from broke to rich.
Exactly. You nailed it right there on the head. And so, somebody asked in the chat, like, I think it was cousin Kareem,
Hmm.
or someone that asks, yeah, he said, who is the US in debt to? So, like, for example, an easy way to look at it is, remember when Japan started going on, remember when Japan was like the topic of discussion
Hmm.
towards the middle of the year, and when Japan started becoming a part of that topic of discussion, the market started to dip as soon as we started to see what was happening in Japan.
Yes.
There you have it. So
So,
Japan is one of the largest holders of US backed debt. Of course, you got China, you got
mhm.
United Kingdom, and then of course you got like places like Germany and Canada. But I mean, really, it's like, Japan and China that ultimately hold a lot of those notes. I can't really give you the exact number. Last time I talked, I think it was like 1.1 trillion, as it pertains to like
Mm.
countries that they had invested, that they had invested. So when you see things that happen and that get, erupted in the bond market, now you see what's happening as it pertains to like what's happening on that US back debt side, who's investing into what. So
it's the one of the problems though, Mark, with the US debt is that it's not going to be slowing down.
No, we'll probably reach $50 trillion if at the rate in which that we're doing. Probably within the next 10 years, we'll probably have a $50 trillion debt bomb sitting in our
Yeah, which
laps.
is anyway. It's hard to conceptualize. That's a lot
That's a
of
lot. That's a lot.
money.
Like it's kind of like and that's why I was asking. Like, is it real or is it like more like an arbitrary number? I think that sooner or later we'll come to a point where it's like when things slow down, we'll have
Mhm,
no other choice but to ultimately start to pay off large portions of that debt. But I think
mhm.
that we have to get to a place in which that the United States economy is very much so booming, and that's really letting you know a sign of the times as it pertains to where we are economically.
Well,
So
George,
yeah,
or not George, I'm sorry, why am I saying George? Jerome Powell
mm.
does not think it's sustainable at
No, it's
all.
not. I mean,
So,
nothing is ever sustainable. I mean, it's just like having a checking account, and then ultimately, like, your checking account has a balance, and then it also has a credit balance. And then once you exceed that credit balance,
mhm.
it's like you start getting into no man's land. You can keep going, like, for example, hey, you're going to take out loans. Okay. So then your checking account balance is negative. Then your credit balance is negative. Then essentially your loan balance is negative. And it's a snowball effect where, as you can see,
Mhm.
it's not sustainable. So ultimately, sooner or later, things are going to have to get reeled in. And Uncle Charles said it best, like he
What do you
said,
say?
monopoly money.
Right, they're gonna be printing like crazy. So, okay, now with the corporate debt, how now if we take it from macro to micro,
Yep.
is that setup looking like?
So remember those times when interest rates were low and everybody was ultimately out there
Mhm,
borrowing and just
mhm.
like, hey, we're
With the
borrowing
sheet?
at these rates, and they're not
Mhm,
borrow like a lot of them weren't borrowing at fixed rates. They were borrowing at variable rates. And so now a lot of those chickens are coming home to roost.
mhm.
And so you're now starting to reach those moments in which that you reach those maturity points. Now, of course, they can go through like banks, and ultimately, if it's like relationship based, which a lot of banks are, they want to keep the relationship. So, like a lot of your major Fortune 500s should be fine.
Mhm.
Keyword should be
Good,
fine.
okay. Alright.
But if they're not, and essentially it's like that can eat significantly into their profit margins, and then essentially then you have to start looking at those companies very differently as it pertains to growth, because their growth is being cannibalized by the debt that they have to pay. So, and then which can also stunt their growth significantly as it pertains to, well, if your growth is stunted based upon profit margins, which means that essentially you can't really make the investments, which
Mhm.
means that you'll probably start, like, here's an easy way to notice. You'll
Okay.
start seeing companies that start doing layoffs where they have to start cutting back on, say, for example, staff. Because
Right.
why? It always comes down to the bottom line, and the cash flow always dominates the conversation. Here's the thing that I want everybody to, like, if you've got children, or if you got like children, teenagers, whatever, or even just you're just amongst friends, I strongly urge for everybody to get the board game cash flow. Like, if you can,
Oh, yeah.
I know that a lot of us grew up on Monopoly, which is great, and it's a very arbitrary board game. But if you want something that's a little bit more realistic to help you understand not only just the like how to mentally get out of the 9 to 5 and getting into that next phase, and also understanding like when to take risk and when not to take risk and everything else. Look, the idea is ultimately to literally play that game because he'll give you some understanding. D'Angelo says that he's triggered because the last time that he was here,
Mhm.
I wiped the floor with him in the game, but he
You know what?
learned. Hopefully, he learned.
We should organize, like, a national cash flow day party and have everyone, like, play the game. Host They can host their own game, and we all play at the same time, and then
And just tag us, like just
yeah,
tag us, like for real. Like pretty
I'll
soon,
organize
like we
it.
should we should get to the point where we actually start playing teams.
Yes, let me
I'll
let me
ref because I don't want to be the cheat code. Anybody's team.
let me make
Um,
a note.
yeah,
Organize.
so and what I want you to do is I want you to look at it from, like, it gives you different perspectives also. Like, people always sit there and when they play the game they wonder why it's tougher to get out of the rat race when you're like the doctor or anything else, and we always
Mhm.
pride ourselves on these high paying jobs, but not understanding that with high paying jobs your expenses are just as high, and everything else, it's kind of like assumed. And so essentially, like, your passive income has to supersede your expenses. So again, like, all in all, to say, bringing it back, because I know I was kind of going on a tangent, but I hope that people kind of like grab the gem out of that one. And here comes another one. So when you see companies that are like having to pull back, like let's say 10% of their workforce or 7% of their workforce, okay, imagine if that's 7% of their workforce, what does that calculate as it pertains to dollars? That's billions of dollars in which that company has now just saved. So in those billions of dollars that it's now saved, it's letting you know that it's trying to protect profit margins, and they're going to try to protect profit margins at all costs. If they don't, then essentially, like again, it stunts growth. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, when growth is stunted, then essentially, then they can't go any further. They can't make any other investments towards the future. And you're starting to see companies like that are ultimately like, okay, hey, they joined the AI race, but they were slow to join the AI race. And then essentially it's like now that they're in it, it's like, okay, they kind of like don't know exactly how to navigate. And now they're like talking about laying off large portions of their workforce. And even then
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, well, now the conversation as it pertains to mergers and acquisitions are starting to jump into the conversation. Well, okay, should I just
Good
go ahead and just
segue.
cook? Because I
Yeah.
can just cook, like if we want to.
Wait,
So
get your apron and your chef's hat.
listen, so so when we start looking at mergers and acquisitions, it's going to be like the
Mhm.
companies in which that are just struggling. So you're going to have the companies that are just like struggling to like literally get it into gear. And just because they're publicly traded companies and they sit on the stock market doesn't make them ironclad and they're not defensible. I mean, look at what happened with Supermicro. Somebody had called me the other day asking me about Supermicro and saying, "Hey, are they safe?" And I'm like, I don't know,
Yeah.
because literally it's like if I'm not even looking at the stock and if I'm just looking at the company itself, I'd wait until the audit is complete. But I mean, you're going to have companies like Intel. Like I said, Intel is definitely on watch for an acquisition.
They need to pick up something.
That'd be funny if it was AMD and it was government sponsored.
Wow. Your favorite and Little Boy Blue. Interesting.
Listen, sooner or later we have to come together and not be enemies anymore. We understand how much we
Okay.
need each other. But yeah,
Mhm.
you're going to start seeing companies that are going through mergers and acquisitions because they say that it's the strategic move to do. No,
Mhm.
it's not just a strategic move to do. It's ultimately like giving you a way out. And ultimately, it's like when essentially like you've already cut your workforce and everything else. Now you prepared your financials to look beautiful for any potential suitor
Attractive.
and any
Mhm.
potential acquirer. Like that's the secret to the entire game. Anybody that you ask, if you ever go ask a lawyer or if you go ask anybody that's in finance, they'll tell you your financials always must look beautiful. If your financials don't look beautiful, then nobody wants to buy it.
So we got companies out here intentionally making themselves eligible for the MA. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, I
Random
mean,
fields.
listen, I look, I feel for some of the companies that are like going through that are going through those struggles. Like their capex spending is starting to drop, so which
Mhm.
means that their capex spending drops, which means either one, they're ready for they're in growth phase, but you can't be in growth phase if your capex is being spent. So let's just retract that. So then
Mhm.
that means that essentially that, oh well, then that means that we're making investments for the future. Oh, wait a minute, but you cut back your workforce. Okay, so we
Right.
can't use that. So let's retract that. Well, so we're just trying to prepare ourselves and ultimately just hunker down. Oh, no, you're not. Because again, it's like, okay, well, why are you selling off these assets or ultimately cutting out these departments and putting them
Mhm.
on the shelf at your company? See, again, it's like, just pay attention, people. Like I said, if people have been paying attention to all the things that are happening in music, and if you're following, look, if you're so good at following Drake versus Kendrick Lamar as it pertains to Drake, calling HR on Kendrick Lamar, then you should be able to go and check and see what's going on in the markets and see what's
Mhm.
happening within some of these companies and sitting back and asking the questions with the side eye. Hey, yo, are you getting ready to get acquired? Like, cause look, it some names
Pageantry
sounded
of it
right.
all. Mhm.
Right.
They in the
So
mirror like, "Okay, let me make sure I look good for, Apple right quick. What's
look, like I
Apple
said,
into?"
better find a mop is getting sticky because literally, like I said, I try to warn everybody ahead of time saying, hey, the companies that you trust are the companies that have strong cash.
Mhm.
Like the companies that have strong cash are the ones in which that you trust. If they don't have strong cash on their books and everything else, I mean, think about it. We just went through X amount of time period. And companies like Apple and Microsoft were still making 100, and even we'll throw even Meta into that conversation, and even we'll throw in Amazon. These four companies were bringing in $100 billion in revenue over a 3 month span.
100 billion with a B.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of, we're still on this topic of mergers and acquisitions. Um, do you want to talk about? Actually, no. What? Maybe. Okay. Let's talk about. Well, okay. When I think about the mergers and acquisitions, like it naturally makes me think of competition and who's competing against who. Because the more you can scoop up, to make your bottom line that much better by acquiring another company that already is smaller than you, already has the technology or whatever, so that you
Yep.
can compete against another big dog.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about two giants
Let's do
right
it. So who are we
now.
talking about?
Amazon and Nvidia. So there's competition between the two because Amazon now is stepping into the AI chip maker market so that they can essentially compete against Nvidia. So my question mark is, okay, so I it may be likely that we'll have more oh yeah, there goes the article. It may be likely that we have more uh cloud companies looking to compete in this arena to kind of get rid of the third party chip maker reliance. So,
It'd be funny if Meta's the number one customer to Amazon for that AI chip, but
well. So, okay, so in the short term, Mark, I don't see when I think about Amazon versus Nvidia in the short term, I don't see any immediate risk just given Nvidia's market leadership. But if we're looking at it in the long term, what are the potential risk and threats versus when it comes to Nvidia going up
other
against
players,
Amazon? Yeah,
other players. I
yeah.
mean, your biggest risk is the other players. Like
Mhm.
you don't have to outswim. You don't have to outswim the sharks. You just have to outswim the guy you're scuba diving with.
Right.
Like, and honestly, listen, if I'm Nvidia, I'm not afraid as it
Mhm.
pertains to Amazon stepping in to compete within this AI chip space.
Mhm.
I'd kind of expected it. Like Google's already there. I mean, Apple's got its own rendition.
Mhm.
Microsoft is still using, its, various providers through the cloud services. And you see many other players, and of course AMD is also ramping up into that space as well. So I think that it's providing a lot of legitimacy. I think the thing is that Nvidia embraces the fact that okay, hey, there's going to be competitors, but at the same token, we've got folks in whom which that are legitimizing the space in which that we're in that ultimately like enriches it. My biggest hope for Nvidia is that they don't become complacent. Like I think
Mhm.
that they've had a blueprint of what it looks like when you have been the leader for a dominant period of time. Because let's put it into perspective. Nvidia has just become the dominant like chip company. But
Mhm.
once upon a time, it was actually, somebody else, which was Intel.
Mhm.
Now Intel is struggling. Why? Because Intel got complacent.
Yeah, slow to adopt, slow to move. Mhm.
Exactly.
So,
So with that being said, it's like I think that as long as Nvidia still stays on its course, as it pertains to, hey, let's keep innovating, let's keep pushing the envelope, let's keep being the leader that ultimately, like, okay, we keep going to different arenas,
mhm.
they're gonna be just fine. But I did try to give people a forewarning and saying that, look, be advised, you know, Amazon has dominated the cloud space for quite some time. They have remained number one for quite some time. And the way that they do is they iterate, and then essentially get to a place of scale it, continue to scale as they're continuing to scale, they're continuing to make iterations even within those scaling periods. So I think that it's something that they've been talking about underneath the hood and is now just like hitting the foray. But if
Mhm.
we journey back a little while, I could have
Mhm.
sworn we kind of had this conversation
We
a while
did.
back earlier this year when I think it was like around the summer that I was trying to let everybody else know that, hey, look, don't be surprised if you see if you see Amazon step into the space to challenge companies like Nvidia within AI chips, and don't be surprised if they also look to bring on a massive customer, aka like a
Yeah.
Meta, into
Hmm.
the conversation. I think that that's going to be I think that that's going to be the interesting conversation as
Well,
we move forward over the next 9 to 12 months.
well, one of the things too that we've talked about since 2020 when we first came on was how Amazon, like their whole philosophy really is a startup model.
Yes.
All of their different branches, departments, whatever you want to call them, or separate companies are all ran like startups. So
Yep.
when you have that philosophy, you are able to pivot because it's a part of your culture.
Yep.
And that's probably one of the mistakes that Intel did not have. And they became almost like a tech, I mean, I guess dinosaur in that sense, because they weren't able to move quickly like a startup. So when you have a company like Amazon stepping into the foray, it's like, okay, you got to pay attention and see what they got going on. Pay attention to any potential mergers and acquisitions, like just because they have cash. So just look and be on
and
your
and,
B's
and
about
look
it.
at those cash balances. Like
Mhm,
stay tuned to those cash balance sheets because and then on top of that, when those 10Qs come out and 10Ks come out, um, pay attention because acquisitions fall underneath those. Like you can see like what is it that they acquired, even though that they may not publicize it, but they
mhm,
do have to mention those things legally and they have to be reported to the SEC as it pertains to what was acquired. So I would just, you know, I would just be very attuned to what's happening there. And I think that we're coming to the end of phase one as it
mhm,
pertains to this AI craze. Now, what does that mean? You're going to probably start seeing a lot of companies dump off, or you're going to probably start seeing a lot of companies hit that struggle period because now it's like, okay, hey, investors are going to, their expectations become even more stronger. And essentially, they're going to be looking to see, okay, hey, well, what does it like? You had a lot of hype that went behind it, but now what does that turn into as it pertains to like how does that portray in actual dollars or in actual performance? So that's going to be some of the biggest questions in which that's going to be sitting at the feet for a lot of these companies as we move into phase two. And if they can't meet that, that's just like a startup that raises money out at some high ridiculous valuation. And then when it comes to this point where it's like, okay, hey, have you met this valuation? And they haven't met
mhm,
it, then essentially that's ultimately how CEOs get fired. I'm not
mhm.
saying that any publicly traded CEOs get fired at this point, but ultimately that could spell doom and gloom for some of the companies as it pertains to shareholders wanting to be involved. So again, just something to pay attention to for sure.
Yeah. And I realized when I said, oh, let's go from broke to rich, as we were, going over these topics, I
Mm-hmm.
forgot one of the topics that I wanted to cover, which was tariffs.
Yes.
So we have this potential tariff
Mm-hmm.
coming up, or tariffs, I should say,
I was gonna say it's two
on China
in
and Canada
Mexico
and
and Mexico.
Mexico. So
Yep.
those are the top three. And with this new administration, they're basically saying, okay, we need to impose this 25% tariff on those three to combat. Um, well, they say it's for drugs and immigration reasons, like to
Hmm.
stop the flow.
So then
And
why did the autos go negative when that was announced?
well, we already know what happens when you start to cut back on immigration when it leads to jobs, which we'll talk about jobs next. But
Yes.
um, the whole piece about stopping the inflow of drugs, my question is, one, how are they going to track this? Like, how do they know when they're successful? Um, when it comes to that portion of it specifically. And then two, let's talk about like the real implications of these tariffs, because you got major companies like Walmart already saying, look, we're raising the prices, y'all. If old boy says 25%, the prices are going to raise automatically. Don't ask us no questions. Don't call corporate customer service, Karen, stand down, pipe down. Like they're already saying they're already saying that we're going to increase prices. So if we're looking at this like in the context of investors, and we're looking at this in the context of like how is this going to impact our portfolios, or where we should be looking to conduct like our analysis of this impact, where do we go? What are we looking at here? What's really the impact for us?
That's a lot to unpack, but ultimately that
Yeah.
you're looking at least a 1% rise in inflation.
So now what's interesting about that, Mark, is all of this talk during election season was like, prices are too high, so that's why I'm going to vote, red or whatever. And now we're looking at the increase of
But it's not going
consumer
to be
goods.
instantaneous, though. That's the beautiful part about it. It's not going to be
Mhm.
instantaneous.
So it's going to be a slow.
Remember how slow it took for inflation to rise, even with
Mhm.
COVID?
Yeah, so much to the point where they said that, oh, this is just, temporary, it's not going to stick. And it got sticky.
Now I got you. Look, I knew it. I knew it. It was bound to get Jolene. It was bound to get you.
Oh, Lord. Well, mops are going to
Um,
be more expensive too now. Okay.
look, listen,
You better get your mop now. It's on
listen.
sale.
So just okay. So for everybody out there, they're like, "Yo, what is the running joke here as it pertains to like this whole sticky conversation?" So the
Mhm,
sticky part is like we were listening to Tyler the Creator's song, and then he has a song "Sticky." So
mhm.
listen at if you got kids,
It's such a great album. It
it
really is.
is album of the year. All right, so let's talk about it a little bit further,
Mhm,
though. All jokes aside, so the best way that I was ever explained to as it pertains to like when we think about politics and when we think
mhm,
about like when people run on specific campaigns, a wise man once taught a young man,
mhm,
and he said, he said a guy literally went to go visit before he had to make a choice. He had the opportunity to go look at what hell was going to be like and what heaven was
mhm.
going to look like. And when he went to
Okay.
go look at hell, hell was like this amazing place and everything else. It was lit, it was popping and everything else. And when he got to heaven, when he showed him heaven, heaven was just like so dull and everything else, boring and everything else. And then when he asked him, he was like, when you make your decision,
Mhm,
you have to stick with your decision. And the guy was like, yo, he was like, I want to go down under. And the guy was like, "Are you sure?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so he ended up going to hell. And then when he got to hell, it was nothing like how he pictured. And he was like, "Wait a minute, you tricked me and everything else." And he's like, "That's what it's like to actually be campaign and marketed to."
mm,
So I'm not saying that essentially that like what Donald Trump is going to do as it pertains to within his campaign or within his presidency is ultimately going to literally drop the entire like economy and everything else. Though I have this here's my personal opinion. I
okay.
think that in 3 years,
Mhm,
it's gonna get very sticky and very muggy and very hot for a lot of people within this economy and within this country, and they're gonna be like, okay, I'm not feeling good about where we are. And it's not because of the fact of all the other like statements and comments and all this other stuff. They're gonna look at it purely based upon what ultimately got him what got him elected, and that was like pretty much um the economy. He ran on the economy. Now the question is, can you fix the economy? If you can fix it, great. But then the question is it going to be a temporary fix, and then it ultimately starts to rear its head? The reason why I say 3 years is because I expect the economy to start to slow down. The economy has been like literally running in high overdrive, just trying to get inflation down, and on top of
mhm,
that, trying to do XYZ. Remember all these conversations that we kept talking about as it pertains to corporate debt and US debt and all those things? Well, when you have to reel those in, certain things start to also have to get cut. I mean, you're going to have to try to balance budgets and everything else, and you're going to go through some pain. So the question is, like, what is that going to look like for the long run? And
mhm,
so, will people feel better about where they are 4 years from now? That's the question. But if you're bringing on the tariffs conversation, which
mhm.
ultimately makes it rise by at least 1%, this could be a challenging situation in which that, ugh. Like, because when you think about it, tariffs ultimately hit the companies in whom which that they're trying to serve. And I have to applaud like companies like Apple that literally held it down for their customer base and
They
didn't
did.
raise the prices. But
Mm-hmm.
not every company is like that, because not every company has like pricing control when they
Mm-hmm.
can control the supply chain and logistics side of the, and on top of that, the manufacturing process. So they have power over the entire process. Not every company is going to have that. And so when they don't have that type of power, then they're going to have to adjust their prices to ultimately meet the fact that, okay, hey, it's either that or we're selling things closer to a loss. Like, you have to look at some industries, like
Mm-hmm.
22% is a good profit margin for them. But any disruptions within that, like, you're literally going to say that it's like they're going to feel the effects, especially like retail stores like Walmart or Target, they're going to feel the effects. When you think
So,
about like industrial companies, or when you think about
mhm.
agriculture, they're going to feel the effects. And ultimately the consumer is going to, that, like, who does it pass on to? It passes on to the consumer. The consumer is going to feel that pain.
So, okay, one of the things that besides being able to control like supply that Apple was able to do to keep those prices down was some of their ESG policies. So, what other I mean, especially like with the being able to recycle old phones and then make, something new, which people were happy to turn in old phones just to get the discount and then buy a new phone, which was probably parts of their old phone. But anyway, what how can ESG what are other ways that ESG can have a positive benefit on this potential rise in prices for some of these other companies?
It depends upon how it depends upon like the control that they have within their supply chain and their
Hmm.
process. I mean, also, when we think about ESG, it also depends upon how is that they're making decisions. Most ESG is,
Hmm.
you fix things today, so then that way you don't have to deal with it tomorrow. You fix today's lazy, so that way you can solve tomorrow's crazy. Like, that's literally the concept of what we
Okay.
think about when we think about ESG. You're solving environmental, social, and governance problems today, so then that way when things get crazy later, it's less crazier for you because you're already prepared for it. So if companies are ultimately doing that, um, then they're going to be fine. I mean, to a certain degree, but again, it depends upon how much of the process do they
That
own.
they have control of. Okay, got you.
Yeah, if they don't own a massive part of the process, or control of the entire cycle of things,
Hmm.
that could spell a problem. Like, for example, the reason why we say Apple can control the problem is because of the fact that every single iPhone that they sell is like 9 times out of 10, we're at a place now, Jolyn, that every single phone that people buy today is
Hmm.
recycled material from somebody else's phone that they were using, that now you're using, that has been made from.
Hmm.
It's actually pretty ingenious because you're still selling it at the same price. You're not even selling it at a discounted price. You're
No,
selling it at the same price, but yet you're using the same materials that ultimately created, let's say, the iPhone 8, iPhone 10, or iPhone
right. It's
12, or
all a little
whatever it
mixture.
is. It's well, but that's the beautiful thing about it, though.
Hmm.
Carbon positive now. So they
Hmm.
went from, or is it carbon positive or carbon neutral or negative? Like,
I always get it
everybody
mixed
wants to get
up.
to neutral. Look, I'm
Hmm.
getting a little tongue tied here because I know that we got other subjects that we got to run to. But
Hmm.
whatever it is the good side. That's Apple, where they are now, and every company wants to be in that process.
Yeah. All right. So now
Yeah.
we got to go back to this U.S. job market.
Yes,
Sorry, we kind of been all over the place, but
we have.
well, we already know how unemployment is looking right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's a little under 4% at 3.9%,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to increase
Mm-hmm.
to, well, they're saying it's going to increase to, well, when I say well over that, even a tenth of percentage point is too high when it comes to unemployment rates in the US market. So they're saying, like, when I say they, I mean like economists are
Yeah.
projecting 4.2%. So the question is, how is this going to impact the market, and what sector should we be
Well,
looking
it's kind
at?
of crazy because when we look at it, like, if you notice, like, if you ever see that a company lays off like a massive amount of folks, then
Mhm.
have you ever noticed that the stock typically jumps?
Yeah, because they're they're decreasing their profit margin
they're
or
they're
increasing their
they're
profit
they're
margin.
well, either that or they're keeping their profit margins the same and also getting rid of expenses. And of
Mhm.
course, investors look at that as a knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, hey, they're getting rid of expenses, or they're decreasing expenses. um I think that some companies are better well positioned. I think that there's a lot of companies, like for example within the tech sector, that like literally went through massive layoffs, and I
Mhm.
think that they over laid off people, and now
Yes.
they're trying to go back and hire quite a few people because they realize, okay, hey, we're hitting this place and we're starting to hit like massive amounts of demand here, and we don't have enough talent and staff to be able to supplant or to be able to supply for the demand. So I think that like other arenas, you're going to see that opens up. um my biggest thing is just that, I'm looking at it from the standpoints as it pertains to cost. Like a lot
Mhm.
of times people will sit back and say, Mark, you keep saying cost, you keep saying cost. And I'm going to keep saying it because at the end of the day, it still comes down to cash flow. Um, if cash flow statements and balance sheets are strong, then you're good. If cash flow is ultimately decreasing, um, then there may be some challenges ahead. Um, and with
Mhm.
that being said, I think that some industries are going to see, like, for example, like agriculture has definitely been needing talent. But the thing is that essentially the cost as it pertains to, to acquire that talent, especially here in the US, is too high.
Mm.
Now we're talking about things like manufacturing, where you saw that, like, I think in the early fall, we saw a lot of unions go on strike. We saw a lot of folks like literally asking for pay raises, um, which is fine. Um, but at the same time, it's like, okay, hey, they don't understand. Like some people just don't understand. You know, for that bump in 30% as it pertains to salaries,
Mhm.
it's gonna come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And at the same time that Boeing, I think, settled, they also like turned around the next week and said, "Hey, look, listen, we gonna have to do some layoffs."
Yeah.
So, look, I mean, somebody asked the question like, "I thought that they or U.S. can't compete or with fiscal structure," and then somebody said, "I thought they laid off to prepare for AI." Some companies did that, but ultimately, what was the overall objective there? You laid off to prepare for AI to do what? I mean, you still
Yeah.
need people to process that AI. You still need to hire people to be able to support that AI infrastructure that you have. You can't just like, and I think that a lot of folks thought that they could just like literally implement AI infrastructure and say, okay, hey, well, you know, we're gonna be okay. We just implement it and we're good to go. And that's not the case. You need the
Right.
system that ultimately supports it. So, do I believe that there's gonna be new jobs created in 2025? Yes, I think that we'll start seeing newer jobs come um, in 2025 that support a lot of those new age arenas. And for the folks out there that are like literally looking to bring their kids into tech, wow. This is what happens when you have a
Good
smart.
lighting.
This is what happens when your room is smart. Your room is like, all right, hey now, there's your marker,
Right.
um, and
Now
then
it's
it's
back.
motion censored.
Mhm.
um, I think the thing is that people need to understand though is when we look at jobs, there's going to be a ton of jobs that are going to be created. There's going to be a lot of new jobs that are going to be created. And I
Mhm.
think the thing is, like, if people are wanting to know how to win, you know, you're investors now. You've been in, like, if you've been watching the Come Up series since 2020, then every single breadcrumb, and honestly, truth be told, I stopped speaking in riddles back in 2022. So
Okay.
everything that I've been saying has been going straight up off. Like, look, I'm shooting straight from the hip. So like straight no chaser. Literally, if you got kids that are interested in being content creators, look, I'm sorry, that's a hobby. If it's not paying you, if it's not literally something that can sustain you over the next 5 years and literally
Mhm.
set you up with a strong retirement plan, then you need to have a backup. And if you need that backup, then you need to get an education. And if you need it,
Well,
it can either be college or it could
mhm.
be like programs in which that they have 18-week programs and everything else. But I'm telling you right now that
Mhm.
essentially, if you're not embedded somewhere as it pertains to STEM, especially within the tech space, understanding exactly like, okay, hey, now that we've ended phase one of AI, and understanding that the next phase is even going to be even more lucrative than phase one. Like, think about it
Mhm.
like this: phase one is just the hype.
Right.
Phase two is the investment. Like, that's the part that people don't understand. Like, you're starting to see phase two in certain places where it's like you have companies that are like raising money at astronomical valuations. Yeah, that happens in phase one when you see hype, but now it's like people want to see the result of that hype. And then after they've seen the result of that hype, the next thing that they want is like, okay, that they've seen when they see progress reports, it's like, oh wow, this is even bigger than I thought it was going to be. Okay, when's the next time that I can invest in this?
Mhm.
So again, you're going to start seeing, you know, you're going to
Well,
start seeing more investment. You're going to
you know
start
what I
seeing
saw?
billions of dollars.
What I saw, at AfroTech was how big cybersecurity could be and is getting. Like as far as jobs go. And I was shocked. I was sitting there listening to, and I cannot remember her name, but I was sitting there listening to a really good session on why, Black and other PLC should go into cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to work. But like as I was sitting there, I was like, oh my gosh, like I was actually interested. So if I ever return to the workforce, it would probably be in cybersecurity because the way they made it sound, it just blew me away.
Listen, okay, so I can't take my headphones off because that's the only way I'm going to have to hear you. So,
Okay.
listen, if you want to get into cybersecurity, go
Mhm.
now and go study your CompTIA and get your Security Plus. It's not that hard. It's just like getting an 8A certification or anything else. You can go
Mhm.
study up on Coursera. If you really want to start making investments in yourself, go on Coursera and spend the $600 for the year. It's more than what you like. If you really think about it, like if you add up every single drink that you add that you go spend at the bar in a year, you
Mhm.
spent more at the bar than you did on, say, for example, your own improvement.
Or
So spend the
coffee.
six or coffee. Go spend the $600 and then literally go get as many certifications as you can, so in which that you can learn the space as it pertains to the new things that are coming through. Oh yeah, I'm about to cook. And then essentially, if you want to, I mean, if like there's tons of jobs in which that you can get that are either through the government or also within other companies, where it's like there's a ton of AI companies out there, or there's a ton of data center companies out there that are looking to hire people, and they're getting paid six figures, anywhere from 120 to roughly $180,000 a year, and you didn't need a college degree. You just needed a few certs underneath your belt and understand exactly how data centers work, and also understand good customer service, and essentially they'll hire you. I mean, the ultimate objective is just look, be curious, and through your curiosity, ultimately let your curiosity run wild and learn something. Like when you're curious, you learn, and when you learn, now the next objective is to literally take that learning and to apply it. And that's ultimately what we want for you guys. There's no secret play here. There's no run the play and all this other stuff. If that's what you want to do as it pertains to stepping into cybersecurity, if you want to, if you even want to go further, go get your Cisco Networking Academy or your Cisco Networking Professional certification. I mean, I think that one's a little bit more pricier, but I think that it came down. They used to give it out in high school for high school students. I think they still do. If you want to be ahead, say for example in high school, go take classes in college for while you're still in high school and get the 2 years underneath your belt that can like literally spearhead you for college, and also not only just take the basic courses but take things that are within the STEM fields also, so that way you can round up your curiosity. Go get involved with, say for example, folks in whom which that like a lot of corporations out there have a lot of programs in which that are mentored focus, in which that they can literally give like literally take your kids on field trips to their actual corporate offices. There's a lot of programs, like I know here in Seattle they have the Black Achievers program, which was through the YMCA. I'm probably
Mhm.
sure that that's national across the country. If not, go start one and ultimately do it. There's so many things in which that you can do. Oh, should I keep cooking or should I stop? You know what, I'm gonna keep cooking because
Keep
honestly
going.
it's getting hot in here. All right, so another thing is like if you want to learn AI, don't just spend all your time on Chat GPT and everything
Right.
else, because
Right.
that's just a generative AI. It doesn't measure your creativity and everything else. Go learn the infrastructures. If you're in software, or if you want to learn about software, go take a few Python classes. That's the language for AI and machine learning within itself. I mean, you don't have to be a guru at it, but at least you could be knowledgeable at it and understand the infrastructure as it pertains to where we are. Go look at the jobs in which that are ultimate. Like if you're in HR, I mean, I'm gonna give you a little. I'm gonna give you a little bit of tidbit. A lot of HR is actually starting to be fragmented, where they're starting to put HR across the different sectors of the business. So HR is no longer generalized anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually being infiltrated through the business, and they need less people there. So make the pivot. Go towards operations. Go towards DevOps. Go towards business development. Go towards accounts. Those types of things, and also start learning the tools in which that ultimately make you even more competitive. I mean, though, even if you're not even looking for a job, even if you're not looking for a job, learn these things because then you get to learn the infrastructure and why it's valuable and why is that other people find it viable and valuable, and then essentially go look at the companies in which that are there. Here's another tidbit. Now that we've done hardware, now it's time to talk about software. So now that we've been making all this massive investment dollars as it pertains to AI hardware, now it's time to have AI software. It's time to have their moment in the sun. So companies like Adobe, C3 AI, and many others like Snowflake, and many others, it's going to be their turn now where they get to partake in the sun and also have their valuations creep up just a little bit. So again, there's so much opportunity out there. I mean, my thing is, it's just like, look, y'all,
Well, Mark,
be curious.
I just heard another challenge for 2025, which is everyone take $600 and use that as your investment in yourself and get as many certs as you can on Coursera. So, and one thing is you can look at it like, okay, a bunch of us are going to get it on in this sector, another bunch of us are going to get it in this other sector, and then that way you all can share the information as far as not the cert, but you can share like what you learn and you can apply that to your investing.
Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately the thing. And here's the thing. It's like sooner, like everybody's jumping into like all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Like everybody's running towards the trend, but look towards like we taught you guys well enough to well enough by now. Like look towards not only just what the trend is, but be cognizant of what the market needs.
Mm.
Like that's the thing. Like what does the market need? Like when we think about why entrepreneurs do so well, is because they create something that the market needs. They build something that's valuable that has a unique selling point to what the market needs. You know, don't get me wrong, cybersecurity is huge. It's very
Mm-hmm.
huge. Data centers are going to be even more huge. Energy is going to be huge also because of the fact of the amount of processing power and everything else that essentially we have to rethink exactly what energy looks like.
Yes.
So again, like what is it that the world is leaning towards? What is it that the world wants? What is it that the world needs right now? What is it that economies need right now? What is it that industries need right now? And if you don't even want to think about what they need right now, look at what they need upcoming, what's coming soon. The writing is on the wall if you guys just literally just stop, listen to some, like you'll start noticing a trend after you look at some of the verbiage in earnings reports when they tell you about their consumer base. Like a lot of these earnings reports will tell you about consumer behavior or their customer, what they've learned from their customers, because investors want to know what is it that you've learned from your customers.
Mm-hmm.
Whether what are your enterprise customers are telling you and what are your consumers telling you. It paints an interesting picture. So
Yeah. Well,
look,
oh,
I'll say that
Charles,
I'll
Mark's
save
talking
that for
about
another
digital
day.
twins and
I feel
automation.
like I feel like I watered the garden way too much. I don't want to flood it.
Well, it's about that time. It's exactly 6 o'clock, aka the hard stop. This was a jam-packed episode, and this is definitely one to play back and get all the notes, get all the gems. Do you have any closing remarks before we shut it on down?
Better find them up. It's getting sticky. Nah, but real talk. I mean, we'll talk about it more as we go through as we finish 2024 going into 2025. We got some interesting conversations, and the conversation will continue to get interesting even well into 2025. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
know that it's a holiday coming up for everybody, so have conversations with everybody, not just the stock, but we're more than just the stock market. Like, and
Right.
that's just a place in which that ideas sometimes become validated. But start looking at other arenas as it pertains to, like, let's start asking each other the question: where's the opportunity? Where will the next opportunities come from, and what will they look like? Start having those conversations where you get to understand, like, from other folks. Like, what makes Dan Ives the best analyst on Wall Street is he literally goes and talks to people. He literally asks them questions, not super duper high level, but just basic questions. How's inventory going here? You know, just start having those simple based conversations. Simple based conversations, you'll learn a lot if you're really just listening. But outside of that, of course, enjoy your time with your loved ones because the holiday is upon us. So be safe. Also, don't get too full of yourselves. Hug
Mhm.
someone. Tell them that you care, and also just you know I'm thankful. I'm truly, truly thankful. I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for my family. And I'm thankful that I have another opportunity to bless the stage as I was able to do today. Jolene?
I gotta go. So I'm thankful and I gotta go.
All right. On that note, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We definitely want to hear what you guys think. Best comment gets pinned to to this video. Let us know
Okay.
what you think. I'll talk to you guys later. Until next time, I'm Mark Monroe,
I'm Jillian GC in the place to be.
and this was your come up.